Welcome to Critical IT Solutions podcast series, where technology leadership meets innovation. Join us as we explore the ideas shaping modern IT, from cybersecurity to quantum computing and everything in between.
Your grandparents grew up in a world without commercial air travel, without television, without antibiotics, and by the time they were middle-aged, humans had walked on the moon. That's not a metaphor. That actually happened within a single lifetime. Today, we're breaking down the rapid evolution of technology over the last century, specifically how fast this acceleration is actually moving, what it's done to the fabric of daily life, and what the widening gap between the connected and the disconnected really means for all of us. By the end of this episode, you'll have a completely different sense of just how unusual the moment we're living in actually is. And to dig into all of that, I've got someone who has been deep in this material. Let's get into it.
So the place I always want to start with this topic is scale, because I think most people genuinely underestimate it. Britannica puts it really starkly. Despite the immense achievements of technology by 1900, the decades that followed were more advanced across a wide range of activities than the whole of previously recorded history combined.
Wait, more than all of previously recorded history? That's a huge claim.
It is, and it holds up when you look at what actually happened. The airplane, rockets, interplanetary probes, electronics, atomic power, antibiotics, all of that emerged and matured in roughly 100 years. Britannica describes it as an unparalleled social situation full of possibilities and dangers that would have been virtually unimaginable before the 20th century.
And it's not just the inventions themselves, right? It's the speed at which they arrived.
Exactly, and this is where it gets almost hard to process. According to Our World in Data, published through the World Economic Forum, it took 2.4 million years for our ancestors to go from stone tools to controlling fire. But it took just 66 years to go from the first powered flight to humans landing on the moon.
66 years. That's one human lifetime.
One human lifetime. And the researcher behind that analysis, Max Rosa from the Oxford Martin School, makes this point that I think is really worth sitting with. In the past, the technologies people got used to in childhood were still central to their lives in old age. That's just not true anymore. We live in a time of extraordinarily fast technological change.
So the pace of change itself is accelerating, not just the technology.
That's the key insight. And it means that for recent generations, it became common for technologies that were unimaginable in their youth to become ordinary later in life. That's a completely different relationship with change than any previous generation had.
It makes me think about the dot-com bubble bursting in 2000. Like, even that moment of chaos, companies collapsing, stocks tumbling, the World Economic Forum points out that some companies, like Amazon, just recovered and kept going. And now we're in a world that Amazon basically helped build.
Yeah, and that's a really useful marker because 2000 is close enough that a lot of people remember it. But the world looked so different. According to the World Economic Forum, in 2000, less than 7% of the world's population was online. Cell phone subscriptions globally stood at 740 million.
740 million. And now?
Cell phone subscriptions have surpassed 8 billion, more than the number of people on Earth. And the iPhone didn't even exist until 2007. Apple sold its first iPod in 2001. And 6 years later, the iPhone arrived and, as the World Economic Forum puts it, ushered in a new era of personal technology.
6 years from the iPod to the iPhone. That's wild when you say it out loud.
And broadband access in the US went from about half of Americans having it at home in 2000 to more than 90% today. That's the infrastructure shift that made everything else possible.
So let's talk about what all of this actually did to daily life, because the numbers are one thing, but the lived experience is another.
Right. So Tech Review Advisor maps this out across 5 areas: communication, work, education, health, and psychological well-being. And the communication piece is probably the most visceral. Historically, staying in touch with distant friends or international colleagues required patience. Letters took days or weeks. Long-distance calls were often prohibitively expensive.
And now you can video call someone on the other side of the planet for free.
In real time, in high definition. Tech Review Advisor describes it as the death of distance. The ability to communicate without delay reshaped global commerce and allowed families divided by oceans to maintain close daily contact. The distance between continents now feels, in their words, trivial.
That phrase, the death of distance, is striking. Because it's not just about convenience, it's about what becomes possible when geography stops being a barrier.
Exactly. And it cascades into work. Remote work and automation have redefined professional environments, enabling what Tech Review Advisor calls a flexible, borderless, and more efficient global workforce. The borderless office is real now in a way it just wasn't 20 years ago.
And education too, right? Like the access to information has completely changed.
Massively. The framing from Tech Review Advisor is that information has been democratized, and the shift isn't just about access, it's about what education is for. The focus has moved from rote memorization to critical thinking and source evaluation, because the information itself is everywhere. The challenge is now knowing what to do with it.
That's a real shift. It used to be that knowing things was the skill. Now it's knowing how to evaluate what you know.
And that's a harder skill, honestly. But let's zoom out to the global picture, because this is where it gets complicated. The ITU, the UN's specialized agency for ICTs, put out their Facts and Figures report for 2025, and it shows that almost 3/4 of the world's population are now online.
3/4. That's remarkable.
It is. But the same report says 2.2 billion people remain offline, most of them in low and middle income countries, and progress is actually slowing. Mobile broadband coverage is nearly universal in terms of reach, but quality and affordability gaps persist. 5G now reaches more than half the global population, but coverage is concentrated in high-income countries.
So the headline number looks great, but the distribution is really uneven.
Very uneven. And the World Bank's Digital Progress and Trends report from 2023 makes a point that I think deserves more attention. The digital divide is becoming synonymous with a development divide. Being offline isn't just an inconvenience anymore. It's increasingly the same as being locked out of economic opportunity.
That's a stark way to put it, and the numbers on the economic side back that up, right?
They do. The World Bank report found that the IT services sector, things like tech consulting and software development, grew twice as fast as the rest of the economy and created jobs at 6 times the rate of the global economy. But here's the catch. That growth was highly concentrated. The top 6 economies accounted for 70% of global value added in IT services.
6 economies capturing 70% of the gains. That's not a rising tide lifting all boats.
Not at all. And it connects to something Tech Review Advisor flags as one of the significant challenges of this moment, the digital divide between different socio-economic groups. It's not just a global north-south issue, it plays out within countries too.
So we've got this extraordinary acceleration of technology, genuinely transforming daily life for billions of people, but the benefits are landing very unevenly. And meanwhile, the pace keeps picking up.
Right. And McKinsey's Technology Trends Outlook for 2025 captures that well. They describe the global technology landscape as undergoing significant shifts, propelled by fast-moving innovations that are exponentially increasing demand for computing power. Countries and corporations are racing to secure leadership in producing and applying what they call strategic technologies.
Strategic technologies. That framing is interesting. It's not just about convenience or productivity anymore. It's about geopolitical positioning.
Exactly. And Britannica actually traces this back to the 20th century, noting that technological leadership passed from Britain and the European nations to the United States in the course of the 2 world wars. The race for technological dominance isn't new, it's just moved into new arenas.
That's a useful historical anchor. It's easy to think of this as a purely modern phenomenon, but the competition over who leads technologically has been going on for over a century.
And what's changed is the speed of the cycle. Britannica describes the years 1900 to 1945 as dominated by the 2 world wars, and the years since 1945 as preoccupied with avoiding another major war, with the detonation of the first atomic bomb in July 1945 at Alamogordo, New Mexico, as the dividing point of outstanding social and technological significance.
The atomic bomb as a dividing line. That's not just a military event, it's a moment where technology permanently changed what was possible and what was at stake.
And it set the template for how we think about transformative technology ever since. Enormous potential, enormous risk, and a race to be the one who controls it.
Let's bring it back to the everyday, though, because I think there's a risk of getting lost in the macro picture. What does this acceleration actually feel like for people living through it right now?
So the lifestyle piece is fascinating. A piece from 2026, tracking modern living trends, notes that smartphones, social media, and digital platforms have transformed how people communicate, shop, and entertain themselves. Short-form videos, online communities, content creation, these have become central to modern culture.
And people are spending more time in digital spaces than physical ones in some ways.
Right. And the same source notes that virtual experiences, online events, digital fashion are becoming more popular, especially among younger generations. The line between the digital and the physical is genuinely blurring. McKinsey actually uses that exact language. Executives are navigating a world where the lines between digital and physical continue to blur.
And on the health side, wearables, smart home devices, that's another layer of this.
Tech Review Advisor points to wearable technology and smart home integration as making health management and daily routines more proactive and convenient. The idea is that connected devices are shifting health from reactive to preventive. You're not just going to the doctor when something's wrong, you're monitoring continuously.
Which sounds great, but also raises real questions about privacy and data.
Absolutely. And Tech Review Advisor doesn't shy away from that. They list privacy risks alongside digital fatigue as significant challenges of this moment. Technology as a dual force is how they frame it. A powerful instrument that elevates human capability, yet one that constantly alters our most fundamental behaviors and interactions.
A dual force. That's a really honest framing. It's not utopian, it's not dystopian, it's both at once.
And I think that's the most accurate way to hold it. The Springer research on AI and society makes a similar point. AI is increasingly shaping social structures, raising critical ethical, economic, and cultural concerns. The technological development gets a lot of attention, but the broader societal implications are still being mapped.
So we're living inside a transformation that we don't fully understand yet.
That's always been true of major technological shifts. Britannica makes this point about the 20th century. Recent history is notoriously difficult to write because of the mass of material and the problem of distinguishing the significant from the insignificant. We're in that same fog right now, just with more data.
More data, but not necessarily more clarity.
Not automatically. And that's actually one of the things the education shift is supposed to address, moving from memorizing information to evaluating it critically, because the volume of information is only going to keep growing.
Let me push on something. We've talked about the pace accelerating, the benefits being uneven, the challenges being real. Is there a version of this where the acceleration itself becomes the problem? Like, where the speed of change outpaces our ability to adapt?
That's a genuinely open question. The Our World in Data analysis via the World Economic Forum notes that AI could have a fundamentally transformative impact on our world, with many experts believing human-level artificial intelligence will be developed within decades. And the framing there is careful. It says technology can change the world in ways that are unimaginable until they happen.
Unimaginable until they happen. That's almost a warning and a promise at the same time.
It is, and the historical examples make it concrete. Switching on an electric light would have been unimaginable for medieval ancestors. In their childhood, our grandparents would have struggled to imagine a world connected by smartphones and the internet. The point is that our own future might look very different from the world today, and we're probably not imagining it correctly.
That's a humbling thought. We think we're imagining the future, but we're probably just extrapolating from the present.
Every generation has done that, and every generation has been surprised. The question is whether the speed of surprise is now so fast that the gap between what we can imagine and what actually arrives is getting dangerously narrow.
And on the transportation side, because we haven't touched on that, the College MP piece on 100 years of technology traces a similar arc, right? From cars being a rare sight in the early 1900s to mass production to now electric vehicles and self-driving systems.
Yeah, and that arc is a good illustration of how these shifts compound. In the early 1900s, a car was a rare sight. Mass production brought prices down, roads stretched farther, goods moved faster. Then after the 1950s, long highways stitched together towns and cities, shaping where people lived and worked. And now we're at battery electric cars, self-navigating vehicles, delivery pods operating in defined areas.
Each wave building on the last.
And the aviation piece is even more dramatic. The first powered flight in 1903 turned a dream into a timetable, as College MP puts it. By mid-century, commercial jets could cross oceans in hours. Air travel opened fresh markets, brought families together across continents, made cultural exchange part of ordinary life.
And all of that happened within a single century. 1 century from no powered flight to crossing oceans in hours.
And the people who lived through the early part of that century had no framework for imagining the later part. That's the recurring pattern. The change arrives faster than the imagination.
So when you step back from all of this, the 100-year sprint, the acceleration, the uneven distribution, the dual force of technology, what does it actually mean for someone navigating daily life right now?
I think the most honest answer is that the tools available to people today are genuinely extraordinary by any historical standard. The death of distance is real. The democratization of information is real. The ability to work, learn, and connect across borders is real. But so are the challenges, digital fatigue, privacy risks, and the fact that 2.2 billion people are still offline and being left further behind.
And the IT sector growing at twice the rate of the broader economy, but 70% of that value concentrated in 6 countries, that's not a small footnote.
It's not. The World Bank is clear that the digital divide is becoming a development divide, and the ITU data shows that even as 3/4 of the world gets online, progress is slowing and the remaining gap is the hardest to close, because it's not just about infrastructure, it's about affordability and quality.
So the acceleration is real, the transformation is real, but the distribution of who benefits is the unresolved question.
And it's the question that will define the next phase of this. McKinsey's 2025 outlook describes a world where countries and corporations are racing to secure leadership in strategic technologies. That race has winners and losers, and the stakes are higher than they've ever been.
Here's what this really comes down to, I think. We started with the image of a single generation trading physical maps and landline telephones for glowing screens and instant algorithms. And that's not just a metaphor, it's a description of what actually happened to real people in real time, faster than any previous generation experienced.
And the key thing to hold on to is that this isn't a finished story. The pace is still accelerating. The McKinsey report, the ITU data, the World Bank findings, they all point to a moment where the next wave of transformation is already building. AI, 5G, the blurring of digital and physical, these aren't future scenarios, they're current realities for a growing portion of the world.
And for the 2.2 billion still offline, the challenge isn't just catching up, it's that the target keeps moving.
That's exactly right. And that's where the actionable piece lives, understanding that the digital divide isn't a technical problem, it's a policy and equity problem. The infrastructure exists. The question is whether the will to extend it equitably exists too.
So if you're listening to this and you want to take something away, pay attention to who's in the room when decisions about technology get made. Because as the World Bank put it, digital advancement has been uneven, and the gap between the digital haves and have-nots is growing. That's not inevitable. It's a choice.
And on the personal level, the shift from rote memorization to critical thinking that Tech Review Advisor describes isn't just an education trend. It's a survival skill for navigating a world where information is everywhere and the ability to evaluate it is what actually matters.
We opened with the image of our grandparents living through a world that went from no powered flight to humans on the moon in 66 years. They couldn't have imagined it. And here's the thing. We're probably in the same position right now, looking at the next 66 years. The sprint isn't over. It's just getting faster.